The coffee grew cold as the millionaire gazed at the city's skyscrapers. What he didn't know was that that very day, at his dream wedding, he would discover he had 3 children he'd never met. The city stretched endlessly below, grey and gleaming. From the top floor of Ellis Innovations, the view was uninterrupted, yet the office felt cold, hushed, like a museum no one visited. Sunlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, sharp and clinical against the polished steel and charcoal stone. William Smith stood by the glass, hands in the pockets of his perfectly tailored suit. The room, designed by the best in minimalist luxury, offered no distraction from the thoughts crowding his mind. At 35, William was the kind of success Forbes called once in a generation. He had transformed a scrappy college algorithm into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Yet today, he wasn't pacing for a board meeting or merger call. He was rehearsing how to speak to Claire Stewart again. He checked his watch twice, then reached for the ivory envelope on his desk. The wedding invitation he had paid a branding agency $20,000 to design still sat sealed. William slid it into the inner pocket of his suit, but didn't plan to use it. Not yet. 15 minutes later, he stood in the bright, slightly chaotic lobby of St. Raphael's Children's Hospital. The contrast to his office was jarring. A mural of cartoon animals, a faint scent of disinfectant mixed with crayon wax, and the occasional high-pitched giggle echoing from somewhere behind the double doors. He approached the front desk, where a middle-aged nurse in pastel scrubs looked up from her computer. "Excuse me," William said, his voice lower than intended. "I'd like to speak to Dr. Claire Stewart." The nurse raised an eyebrow, then smiled with polite suspicion. "And you are?" He hesitated. "A former acquaintance." She typed something slowly. "Dr. Stewart is finishing with a patient. You can wait over there." He nodded and moved toward the row of plastic chairs. As he sat, a small boy with unruly dark curls darted past, followed by a woman calling his name. "Jordan, slow down." The boy turned and laughed. Something in the boy's eyes, wide, brown, mischievous, made William pause. Too familiar. His gaze returned to the floor, fingers tapping against his thigh. 10 minutes passed, then 15. "Mr. Smith?" He stood too fast. The nurse gestured toward a side corridor. "She's available now. Room 302. William swallowed. As he approached the open door, Claire stepped out. She wore a white coat over navy blue scrubs. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, tucked behind one ear. The years had sharpened her features, but nothing had dimmed her presence. "William?" she said. "I was told someone important was waiting. I should have guessed it was you." His mouth twitched. "It's been a long time." 6 years? Exactly 6 years, 3 months, and 2 days. She blinked once. "You always were precise." There was a silence between them, not quite comfortable, not quite hostile. He cleared his throat. "I wanted to speak with you in person. That's why I came." Claire crossed her arms. "So you flew across the city to surprise me at work? I assume this isn't a medical emergency." "No," he said quietly. "It's about me. About us." A nurse passed behind them, wheeling a cart of supplies. Claire stepped aside and gestured to a quieter corner of the hallway. "I only have a few minutes." "What is it?" He reached into his jacket, fingers brushing the envelope, then pulled his hand back. "I'm getting married." Claire's expression barely changed. "Congratulations." "I wanted to invite you." That stopped her. Her brow furrowed. "You came here to invite me to your wedding?" "Yes." "Why?" He looked at her directly for the first time. "Because you mattered. You still do." A beat passed. She tilted her head slightly. "You disappeared, William. You vanished when your company took off. And now you come to me to invite to your wedding. I would be honored if you agreed to attend, he said quickly. William stepped closer, cautiously. Claire, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to be there, to see what I built. Maybe selfishly. She studied him. You want me to see what I could have had? He didn't answer. She narrowed her eyes. Tell me, William, are you inviting me or performing for me? Maybe both, he admitted. Maybe I don't even know the difference. Claire looked away, then back. Her voice softened. I thought you might say something like that. At least you're honest now. Anyway, I should say a congratulation for your wedding. From down the hall, a young intern approached, wide-eyed. Dr. Stewart, I'm sorry to interrupt, but room 114 is asking for you. Claire nodded at him, then turned to William. I have to go. He nodded, clearing his throat. I'll send the invitation anyway. You already did, she said. With your eyes. She walked back down the hall, without turning again. William remained still for a moment, then glanced toward the boy he had seen earlier. The child was gone now. Only the echo of laughter remained. He turned and left the hospital without looking back. Later that night, Claire sat at her kitchen table. The hospital badge still hung from her neck, forgotten. A thin envelope sat unopened on the counter. She hadn't taken it from him, but somehow she had known it would come. She opened the drawer beside her and pulled out 3 small photographs, well worn and slightly creased at the corners. Leo, Luca, and Otis. Each of them smiling, eyes brown and bright. She traced her fingers over their faces, one by one, her voice low, almost to herself. So, he still doesn't know. She closed her eyes, the weight of silence pressing like a tide. Tomorrow, she would decide. But tonight, she would just breathe. The next evening, after a tiring day at work, Claire returned to her small house with a lot of thoughts. The house sat at the end of a quiet street, lined with maple trees, just beginning to bud. The living room was warm and lived in, framed crayon drawings on the walls, a scattering of Lego pieces across the floor, and the faint scent of something sweet rising from the oven. A jazz record played softly in the background, the scratch of the vinyl familiar and calming. Claire stood in the kitchen, staring at the same envelope she had seen the night before. It was now sitting on the windowsill, unopened. The light from the setting sun touched it, like a question she wasn't ready to answer. "Moom!" Luca's voice echoed down the hall. "Otis stole my blue robot again." "I didn't," Otis called back, half panicked, half proud. Claire didn't move right away. She closed her eyes briefly, then turned off the oven, wiping her hands on a towel. When she stepped into the hallway, Leo was already standing between his brothers, arms crossed. "He did," Leo said calmly, but only because Luca told him he couldn't play with it. Otis's small hands clutched the toy to his chest. His voice wavered. "He always says I break things." Claire crouched down, eye level with them. "Luca, did you say that?" He shrugged. "Maybe." "Then apologize, and Otis next time ask, don't take." The apology was half mumbled, but it came. The robot was returned with minor resistance. Claire kissed Otis's cheek before rising. "Dinner's almost ready. Go wash up." As the boys scattered toward the bathroom, Claire remained in the hallway for a moment, letting the normalcy wash over her like a shield. Then Leo returned. He wasn't running. He wasn't laughing. He was holding something in his hand. It was a photograph. She recognized it instantly. William, maybe 27, seated on the lawn of her old apartment, arms thrown back behind his head, laughing at something she'd said, just out of frame. "Where did you find that?" she asked. Leo's voice was quiet. "In your drawer." Claire took the photo slowly. Her fingers trembled as they brushed the edge. "Mom." Leo looked at her carefully. "Who is he?" She didn't answer right away. The air seemed heavier now, like they were all holding something fragile in the space between them. Luca peeked around the corner. Otis followed, silent. Claire sat down on the floor. They circled around her. "That man," she began softly, "is someone I knew a long time ago." Luca tilted his head. "Is he dead?" "No." Her voice cracked before she could stop it. "He's alive." "Then why doesn't he live here?" Otis whispered. Claire looked down at her hands. "Because he doesn't know he should." There was a long pause. Leo's eyes didn't leave hers. "Is he our dad?" Claire nodded once, slowly. "Yes, he is." No one moved, not until Otis leaned into her side and asked, "Does he know about us?" She pulled him close. "Not yet." Luca looked confused. "But he should. That's how families work." Claire smiled, sad and proud all at once. "You're right. It is. That's why we're going to see him." "When?" Leo asked. Claire met his gaze, steady now. "Soon. He invited me to something, and I think you should come too." The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. It was Linda, their retired neighbor and self-appointed grandma, carrying a Tupperware dish and 2 library books. "I brought the boys the new Explorer series," Linda said, stepping inside, "and cinnamon rolls. I overbaked again." Claire greeted her with a hug. "You're a lifesaver." Linda's eyes flicked to the photo on the coffee table. She lowered her voice. "Is that him?" Claire nodded. "Does he know?" "No," she said softly. Linda studied her for a moment, then touched her shoulder. "Some truths are heavier when carried alone too long." "I know," Claire whispered. "I think it's time I stopped." That night, after the boys had gone to bed, Claire sat alone in her room. A dim lamp cast a gentle cone of light on the desk, where she pulled out a drawer and removed a letter. One she had started 6 years ago, folded a dozen times, worn soft around the edges. She opened it and read, "Dear William, if you're reading this, it means I've finally stopped being afraid." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Instead, she pulled a new sheet of paper from the drawer. This time, she wouldn't write. She would show him. At Ellis Innovations' executive floor, in the next morning, the boardroom was built like a stage. Frosted glass walls framed the skyline. A long, dark oak table stretched through the center like a runway. On the far wall, the company's name glinted in steel. Ellis Innovations, sterile and immaculate. Susan Myers sat at the head of the table, legs crossed, tablet in hand. Always the earliest to arrive, always in control. She wore a charcoal pantsuit as sharp as her tone and had the air of someone who had seen empires rise and fall, and survived both. Across from her, William was uncharacteristically silent. Hannah Lee, the company's young director of communications, hovered near the windows, clutching a file too tightly. Her voice broke the stillness. The updated seating chart for the wedding. Mr. Smith William glanced at her, nodded once, but didn't reach for it. Susan reached over, took the file, and slid it open with a nail tap. "Claire Stewart will be seated 3rd row, left side aisle," she said. William looked up. "Why there?" "Close enough to see every detail," Susan replied, flipping to the next page. "But not close enough to appear in any official photographs." Hannah shifted awkwardly. "If I may..." Some of the team wondered if it might feel intentional. Susan didn't even look at her. "It is intentional." William leaned back in his chair. "Is it, though? Or is it just cruel?" Susan finally turned to him, voice clipped. "She walked out of your life when you had nothing. You've built an empire. There's a narrative here, William. One that reinforces strength, discipline, growth." "Or vanity," Hannah murmured under her breath. Susan arched an eyebrow. "What was that?" I just think, Hannah said, choosing her words carefully, maybe this isn't the right kind of story to tell, especially if she's not a threat. Susan's lips curled slightly. We're not telling a story, Ms. Lee. We're reminding people who William Smith is. William stood, walked to the window, hands in his pockets. The sky was heavy with low cloud. His reflection looked faint and unfamiliar. She's not the same woman anymore, he said, almost to himself. Susan folded the file shut. Exactly. She's the past. This is about your future. There was a long pause. She wrote to me once, William said suddenly. After I made that first Forbes list, I never saw it. But I remember wondering if she had. Susan didn't move. You don't need to relive that. I might, he said. Maybe I've never stopped. Hannah's eyes flicked between them, uncertain. William turned slowly. Tell me, Susan, did you delete her messages? A beat. 2. Susan placed the file neatly in front of her. I made choices to protect you, ones you weren't strong enough to make back then. You mean you made them for me? I mean, she said, voice cool as glass, that if I hadn't, you'd be running a startup from your garage and wondering why no one takes you seriously. William stared at her. And that would have been worse than erasing someone I... He stopped. Susan leaned forward. She had nothing to offer you, except distractions. Emotion. That's a currency you can't spend in our world. Silence stretched. William walked back to the table. He picked up the seating chart, flipped it to the page marked Key Guests, and stared. Claire Stewart, 3rd row. He circled her name with a pen, then looked up. Move her to the front. Susan blinked. What? If she's coming, she's not sitting in the shadows. That's not wise. It's not about wisdom anymore, William said. It's about respect. Susan said nothing. He turned to Hannah. Please make that change. Hannah nodded, barely hiding her surprise. Of course. She gathered her things and slipped quietly from the room. Susan remained seated. She's not who you remember, William. Neither am I. He left the room. Alone, Susan stood slowly. Her fingers grazed the edge of the file, then paused at her tablet. She tapped open an archive, scrolling down through folders labeled with dates and titles, until she reached one. Claire. Unsend. She opened the file. On the screen, dozens of emails from 6 years ago. William, please, just one call. You should know what I found out today. This isn't about us anymore. It's about something bigger. You deserve to know the truth. Susan stared at the screen, eyes unmoving. Then she clicked delete. One by one. No backups, no trace. Just silence. Later that evening, William sat alone in his office, the city lights burning far below like distant stars. The noise of the company, the movement, the engines, the people who needed him, was gone for the night. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk. From beneath a folder of contracts and blueprints, he pulled out a small leather envelope, worn at the edges. Inside was a photograph. Claire, in sunlight, seated cross-legged in a campus garden, grinning, mid-laugh. Her eyes squinted shut. Her head tilted back, one hand resting over his heart. He traced the edge of the photo with his thumb. His hand trembled, barely. He exhaled slowly and set it down beside him. Outside, the sky over Manhattan was darkening into rain. The overhead light hummed gently above the kitchen table, casting soft shadows against chipped ceramic bowls and mismatched placemats. Outside, rain tapped lightly on the window, a slow, rhythmic pulse against the glass. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and tomato sauce. The remains of a dinner half eaten, half abandoned. Claire sat at the table, her elbows resting beside a stack of crayon drawings and construction paper crafts. Across from her, Leo was finishing a homework sheet with a quiet intensity that often made him seem older than 8. Luca hummed to himself as he colored in a figure wearing a cape, his latest drawing titled Super Dad. Otis sat quietly, knees tucked up on his chair, absently spinning a plastic dinosaur between his fingers. The envelope was still there, now half buried beneath Leo's pencil case. Claire didn't look at it. "Ms. Riley called," she said softly, breaking the quiet. Otis looked up first. "She said you've been drawing someone new in class," Claire continued, her voice gentle. "Someone standing behind you and your brothers, but their face is always turned away." Otis blinked, then nodded slowly. "I don't know what he looks like." Claire swallowed. "He doesn't know what you look like either," she said. "Not yet." Luca leaned forward, tapping his drawing. "But we're gonna meet him, right? Super Dad?" Leo glanced up. "Is this about the guy in the photo?" Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Luca scrunched his nose. "He doesn't look like a superhero. He looks like someone who drinks a lot of coffee." Claire laughed, a small, surprised sound, and reached across to brush his hair back. "Well, he probably does." "Does he know about us?" Otis asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. The table fell still. Claire looked at each of them in turn. "No," she said, "he doesn't." Leo folded his hands. "Why not?" "Because years ago, when I tried to tell him, someone made sure he didn't hear me." Her voice caught in her throat, but she pushed forward. "But that wasn't fair, to me or to you, and it's time to change that." Otis leaned into her side. "Will he like us?" She kissed the top of his head. "He's going to love you." "Are we going to call him Dad?" Luca asked. "You can call him whatever you want," Claire said. "He hasn't earned that word yet, but maybe he will." There was a pause. Then Leo, always the practical one, asked, "So, what's his last name?" Claire sat back. "Smith." Leo's brow furrowed. "So if he's our dad, does that mean our last names are supposed to be Smith, too?" "You have my name," Claire said, "and that name was enough. But if someday you want more, we can talk about it." Luca held up his drawing. "I gave him a jetpack." Otis smiled for the first time all evening. Claire laughed again, then stood. "All right, time for pajamas. Go on, I'll clean this up." The boys scattered with a rush of limbs and soft footsteps, Luca narrating an imaginary escape sequence as he zoomed down the hall. Claire moved slowly, gathering plates, folding paper napkins, stacking the drawings. She paused when she came to Luca's. In the corner of the paper, he'd written in large, crooked letters, "My family, me, Leo, Otis, Mom, and..." The figure beside Claire was shaded in grey. No face, just a question mark above the shoulders. She carried the drawing to her desk and set it beside the phone. Then she sat down. For a long moment, she just stared at the screen. Her fingers hovered over the screen. A quiet knock came at the doorframe. Leo stood there, already in his pajamas, hair damp from washing. "Are you okay?" he asked. Claire nodded. "Just thinking. Is this scary for you?" She smiled softly. "A little." Leo stepped closer. "You don't have to do it alone." Claire reached out and squeezed his hand. "I won't." He went back to his room, and Claire, heart steady now, opened her contacts. She found his name, pressed call. The dial tone rang once, twice, 3 times, and then, "Hello?" William's voice was low, cautious. Claire closed her eyes for just a moment, then opened them again. "It's me, Claire," she said. "I got your invitation." A pause. "I'm glad," he said. She took a breath. "I'll be there, but I'm not coming alone." Another pause, then softer. "Claire, I will come with special guests, William." Silence. Then, "I look forward to your guests," he said. Claire looked down at the drawing, at the question mark. "Good," she whispered. She hung up the phone, not with fear this time, but with a quiet, unfamiliar kind of peace. The windows of Susan's corner office faced the East River, though tonight the view was black glass, rain streaking the panes in thin, hesitant lines. The lights were dimmed except for the soft amber glow of her desk lamp, casting long shadows over file folders and sealed envelopes. Outside, the building was asleep. Inside, Susan was wide awake. She sat perfectly still in her leather chair, eyes locked on the glowing screen of her tablet. A single message was open. One line. "Claire Stewart has confirmed attendance." Her finger hovered above the screen, unmoving. The air was thick, not with heat, but with memory, with something far heavier than regret. Across the room, a sleek silver safe was built into the wall behind a modernist painting. With one mechanical turn, she slid the artwork aside and tapped in a familiar code. The lock clicked. From within, Susan pulled out a matte black box. Simple, elegant, heavy. She set it on the table with a care usually reserved for crystal or confession, then opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some were handwritten, others printed from emails, clipped together by year. All addressed to William Smith, all unread, all intercepted. She didn't touch the letters yet, just stared at them like they might catch fire on their own. Behind her, the door creaked open. She didn't turn. "I locked that. I still have clearance," came a quiet voice. Marcus Hale stepped into the office, older now, his tie loosened, hair more salt than pepper. He had once been her assistant, sharp, loyal, until he wasn't. "You shouldn't be here," Susan said. "You called me," he replied, nodding at the box. "You knew I was the only one who saw you take those." "I didn't take them," Susan said, still not facing him. "I kept them." Same difference. Silence. Marcus walked closer, eyeing the open safe. "I always wondered why you didn't destroy them." Susan's voice was quieter now. "Because I thought one day he might need to know." But the years kept passing, and the silence got easier. "Easier for you," Marcus said. "Not for her." Susan finally looked at him. She was going to ruin everything. She was in love with him, he countered, and pregnant. The word cut through the room like glass. Susan looked away. She didn't belong in his world, she said, more to herself than to Marcus. Not then. Not when we were preparing for our Series C. Not when he was 2 months from bankruptcy and one scandal away from losing everything. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't have to. "And what about now?" he asked quietly. "What's the excuse now?" Susan didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the box and pulled one letter from near the top. It was dated 6 years ago. "Dear William, I heard 3 heartbeats today. Not mine, not yours. 3. I thought you should know." Susan read it again, her hand steady. Then she folded it and placed it back. "She's going to walk into that wedding," Marcus said, "and all of this will come with her. I know. And if William finds out what you did, I know." Marcus leaned forward. "Then why haven't you told him yourself?" Susan looked at him, and for a moment, her eyes, so often unreadable, betrayed something softer, wearier. "Because I'm not sure who I was trying to protect anymore," she said. Then she closed the box, slid it back into the safe, and locked it. The moment passed. Marcus turned toward the door. "I'm leaving the company," he said. "This time for good." Susan gave a faint nod. "I figured." At the threshold, he paused. "You were brilliant, Susan. But brilliance doesn't mean you're right." Then he was gone, The office was still again. Susan sat in the dim glow, staring at her reflection in the dark glass window. Her face, once precise and commanding, now looked almost human, a ghost of her younger self. She reached for the desk phone, dialed a number from memory. It rang once, then clicked. A deep male voice answered. "Yes?" Susan didn't introduce herself. "She's coming," she said, calm and cold. "You know what that means." The voice didn't respond. She hung up. The silence returned, but this time it felt closer, heavier. And somewhere beneath it, Susan Myers finally felt something she hadn't in years. Fear was creeping into her mind. Could it be that everything would be exposed? It was only a matter of time. Late night, William's penthouse was still, save for the faint hum of the espresso machine William had forgotten to turn off. Outside, the rain had settled into a quiet mist, softening the skyline into a blur of muted lights. Inside, the air carried the sharp scent of citrus from an untouched drink sitting on the marble counter. William stood barefoot near the kitchen island, scrolling through his tablet with one hand, the other resting on the cool surface. He wasn't searching for anything in particular until a notification from his news feed pinged. Dr. Claire Stewart, awarded Pediatrician of the Year by Chicago Health Alliance. The headline alone didn't register. It wasn't until he saw the accompanying photo that the breath caught in his chest. Claire stood beneath a hospital banner, wearing a lab coat and a modest smile. But it wasn't her face that struck him. It was the three boys standing beside her, roughly the same height, each holding a certificate, identical in age. Triplets. He zoomed in, heart thudding. Brown eyes, a certain curve of the jaw. One of the boys, Leo, he would later learn, had the same dimple on his right cheek that William had tried to hide in every press photo for a decade. "No," he whispered. He opened the article. Dr. Stewart, single mother of triplet boys, has balanced her medical career with parenting since graduating from Johns Hopkins. She has refused to name the father publicly. William stepped back, nearly knocking over the stool behind him. He stood still for a beat, jaw clenched, then reached for his phone. "Eli, I need a trace. Claire Stewart, 3 boys. Find everything, and do it now." A pause, fast and discreet. William's voice sharpened. "Number I don't care about discreet. Just don't lie." He hung up. 2 hours later, an encrypted email arrived in his inbox with a single subject line. "You might want to sit down." William opened the attachment. 3 birth certificates, all bearing the surname Stewart, all listing father unknown. Attached beneath was a short note from Eli. "Genetic markers from public images match yours at 78 to 81% likelihood. Facial mapping confirms. These boys are yours." Also, see the name flagged in old email metadata. Myers, Susan. Everything blurred. William closed his laptop, walked across the room, poured himself a drink he didn't sip, and then, without knowing how he got there, he was standing in the rain outside Susan's building. Susan opened the door in a robe, mascara faintly smudged under her eyes. She didn't look surprised to see him. "I wondered how long it would take," she said. William didn't move. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to answer me without spin. Without agenda." Susan stepped aside. He entered. The apartment was sleek, quiet, sterile almost. She gestured to the couch, but he didn't sit. Instead, he pulled a printed copy of the birth certificates from his coat pocket and placed them on her glass coffee table. "I found out 2 hours ago," he said. 3 sons, born 6 years ago. Claire tried to contact me. Every letter she sent..." Susan didn't blink. "I know." William stared at her. "What?" "I know," she said again. I intercepted them. You what? I stopped them, she said calmly, stepping into the light. Because you weren't ready. Because if you had read those letters, you would have walked away from everything we built. His voice dropped, colder now. You mean everything you built? No, Susan said, eyes narrowing. I mean Ellis, the company, the funding, the future. You were weeks away from collapse. One scandal, one personal distraction, and we would have lost it all. William was silent, his fists clenched at his sides. She wrote me, Claire had once said, and I thought you never cared. Now, the truth seared. You kept my children from me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Susan's reply was immediate. I saved your life. No, Susan. You shaped it into something I don't recognize anymore. Susan turned away, but not before he saw the flicker of doubt in her expression. I read one of the letters tonight, she said, the first one. She opened a drawer, pulled out a pale blue envelope, and handed it to him. William unfolded the paper with slow, trembling hands. Dear William, I heard 3 heartbeats today. Not mine, not yours. 3. I thought you should know. His knees nearly buckled. He sat down, silent. Susan stood across from him, her arms folded like a shield. I was trying to protect you, she said, but it no longer sounded certain. He looked up at her, eyes rimmed red. You protected me from knowing I was a father. Susan said nothing. William rose, took the letter, took the files, and walked toward the door. I'll never forgive you for this, he said quietly. She didn't try to stop him. As he left, rain pelted down in thick lines, soaking his coat, but he didn't notice. He clutched the envelope to his chest, a letter written 6 years too late. And for the first time in years, William Smith felt truly, utterly broken. The lobby of the St. Regis Hotel should have been bustling with the sound of high heels, the laughter of bridesmaids, the constant flow of bouquets, and classical music from the string section in the corner. There should have been a happy bustle, the final pressing of gowns, the opening of champagne bottles backstage, and the bride checking her lipstick in the mirror for the 3rd time. But the reality was different. The lobby of the hotel was hushed, dressed in muted gold and marble, its stillness disturbed only by the soft tapping of heels on polished floors. Outside, the storm from the night before had passed, but the sky remained low and grey, as if reluctant to let go. Inside, everything gleamed, perfect, composed, curated. William stood in front of the grand ballroom doors, one hand resting on the handle. He hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled beneath his coat, and his eyes were the kind that hadn't blinked enough in hours. Inside, Madison was surrounded by stylists, her dress zipped halfway, a pale cream of hand-stitched tulle and subtle diamonds. She turned as soon as she saw him, the smile fading before it even fully formed. She raised a brow. Let me guess, she said, folding her arms. You're not here to talk about centerpieces. Not here for fittings either, William replied. The room fell quiet. Sylvie, her stylist, exchanged a quick glance with one of the assistants and discreetly ushered everyone out, heels clacking and whispers trailing behind them. Madison moved to the edge of the platform, lifting the hem of her dress slightly so she could step down. I knew something was coming, she said softly. You always hold your jaw like that when you're about to pull a trigger. William didn't speak. So? Madison crossed her arms again, voice a little sharper now. Say it. I can't marry you. She exhaled through her nose, half a laugh, half a release. I figured as much when you walked in like someone had died. William looked at her then, finally meeting her eyes. Something did. Madison didn't flinch. Her name's Claire, isn't it? He nodded. Once. She turned away, walking toward the vanity table where her bouquet sat, untouched. She ran a finger along the edge of the mirror. "Do I hate you?" she said aloud, as if testing the words. "Number, I don't. I don't think I ever really loved you either. Not the way people are supposed to." "I know," William said. "I didn't want romance. I wanted security, strategy. And you wanted silence." He closed his eyes for a second. Madison's voice softened. "But I do hate one thing, Will." She turned back to him. "I hate feeling like I was just a placeholder. A piece on a chessboard you never planned to finish playing." William stepped closer. "I hate that too." A beat passed. "Emotional honesty from you," she said, half smiling. "That's new. I'm trying." Her smile faltered again. "You're not the villain, Will, but you're not the hero either." "I'm not looking for either," he said. I have to make this right." Madison leaned against the table, shoulders slouched for the first time in months. "I always knew there was someone else," she admitted. "Not someone you were with. Just someone who lived in your quiet moments." William didn't deny it. "I hope she's worth it," Madison said. "She's not the reason," he replied. "The boys are." Madison blinked. "There are children?" "3. Triplets. My sons." She exhaled. "Jesus. They were mine before I even knew I wanted to be a father." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the low hum of the ceiling lights. "I'll tell the press it was mutual," Madison said at last. "A branding pivot, career divergence, whatever bullshit works." "You don't have to do that." "I do," she said. "For me, not for you." William nodded, grateful in a way he couldn't name. At that moment, his phone buzzed. Susan Myers. He let it ring. Madison looked at the screen. "She'll try to fix this." "I'm not something to fix." He silenced the call. "I hope you become the man they deserve," she said. "I hope I become the man I should have been 6 years ago." Outside, William stepped into his car. He sat for a moment in silence, the weight of every second pressing against his ribs. He opened his phone and scrolled back to a photo from the report Eli had sent. Leo, in a dinosaur t-shirt, his smile wide and fearless. Luca with marker on his hands, mid-giggle. Otis, half hidden behind the others, but looking straight at the camera, as if he knew. William tapped the contact. "Claire." The line rang once, twice. Then, "Hello?" Her voice was careful, measured. He swallowed hard. "It's me." A pause, then, "I figured." William closed his eyes, just for a second. "I cancelled the wedding," he said. Claire didn't speak. "I need to see you," he continued. "And not just you. I want to see Leo, Luca, Otis." There was another pause. Then Claire's voice came, quiet and clear. "We'll be here." William nodded, though she couldn't see it. "We need to talk," he said, "about everything." At this time, his voice didn't shake. Finally, they decided to meet in Central Park late in the morning. The lake shimmered under soft cloud cover, its surface dappled with sunlight, breaking through just enough to warm the air. Ducks drifted along the banks, while the breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh cut grass. Children's laughter floated from the playground nearby, but at the edge of a quiet walking path near the willow trees, time felt like it was holding its breath. William stood by the bench Claire had told him about. He was early, uncharacteristically so. He held a paper bag in one hand, a harmonica box tucked beneath his coat. His other hand kept adjusting the collar of his jacket, only to realize it didn't matter. He looked down at his shoes, then at the path again. His heart thudded, out of sync with the calmness around him. Then he saw them. Claire walked ahead, calm but alert, scanning the area until her eyes met his. Behind her, the three boys moved in a loose triangle. Leo walked with his hands in his pockets, gaze straight ahead, reserved. Luca was skipping sideways, narrating something about space rocks and barely holding on to his juice pouch. Otis trailed slightly behind, clutching a small notebook to his chest. They stopped a few feet from him. Claire didn't move closer right away. William cleared his throat and gave a small wave. "Hi." Silence. Then Otis stepped forward. His shoes made the softest sound against the gravel. He looked up, wide brown eyes peeking out from under dark bangs. His fingers fidgeted at the corner of the notebook. "I'm Otis," he said quietly. William knelt, instinct more than thought. "Hi, Otis." Otis tilted his head. "I like piano. Do you?" William's voice caught. Then he softened. "I used to. I knew how to play Twinkle Twinkle when I was your age." Otis nodded. "That's a good one." William smiled. "It really is." He opened the paper bag and pulled out a small harmonica, worn but polished. "This was mine when I was little. I thought maybe you'd want it." Otis took it carefully, as if it were glass. He turned back toward Claire, who gave a quiet nod. Then, without saying anything else, Otis sat cross-legged near the edge of the grass, examining the harmonica like it held secrets. Luca stepped forward next. He squinted up at William. "If you were a dinosaur, which one would you be?" William blinked. I think I'd be a stegosaurus. They look calm, but they've got armor." Luca looked impressed. "Solid choice." He handed William a small plastic raptor. "Now you're officially part of the squad." William took it like it was a medal. "Thank you." Claire smiled from the side, her arms folded, but her shoulders relaxing slightly. Finally, Leo stepped up. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared, not in fear, not quite in judgment, just measuring. William didn't rush it. After a moment, Leo said, "You look different in real life." William laughed, surprised. "Better or worse?" Leo shrugged. "Taller." William nodded. "I get that a lot." A quiet passed between them. Then Leo unzipped his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it over. It was a list. Crayon scribbled, but carefully written. Things we want to know. Do you eat cereal? Can you build Legos? Have you ever cried during a movie? Do you know how to fix a bike chain? Are you going to leave again? William stared at the last line. He folded the list gently, held it in both hands, like it weighed more than it did. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Leo didn't react at first. Then he sat down beside Otis. Quiet, but closer now. Claire walked forward and joined William on the bench. For a moment, they just watched the boys. Luca trying to make the plastic raptor climb a tree root, Otis blowing gently into the harmonica, Leo sketching something in the dirt with a stick. William let out a long breath. "They're everything." Claire nodded. "They always were. I've missed 6 years." She looked at him. "Don't try to make it all up in one day. Just don't waste today." He nodded, staring straight ahead. Otis looked up and pointed to a duck floating nearby. "Do you think it's a mom or a dad?" William squinted. "Hard to tell." Otis tilted his head. "It looks like it wants to stay. That's probably a mom." William didn't argue. Then Leo, without looking up, asked quietly, "Are you going to disappear again?" William's chest tightened. He looked down at the paper still in his hand, then up at Claire. She didn't answer for him. He turned toward Leo. "No," he said. "I did once. I won't again." Leo finally looked at him, meeting his eyes, and nodded. That was enough. For now. As they packed up their things, crayon wrappers, juice pouches, and the plastic raptor now missing a tail, Otis lingered near William's side, his fingers curled around the strap of his backpack. He looked up, voice soft. "Do you want to come to dinner? At our house?" William hesitated. His instinct was to say no, to keep boundaries clear, to not rush what had only just begun. "I think your mum might want some space," he said gently. Otis looked down. "Okay." Claire had heard it. She watched Otis's shoulders lower, not dramatically, not in protest, but with the quiet understanding of a child already used to waiting. She glanced at William. "You can come," she said, "if you'd like." He looked at her, surprised, searching for hesitation, but there was none, only the smallest smile, tired and open. "Okay, I am very willing," he said finally. And just like that, the five of them began walking, past the park's willow trees, across the footbridge where ducks still drifted, toward a city glowing amber under the weight of dusk. No one said the word family. But in that moment, under the warm hush of a falling sun, it looked like one. The scent of garlic and roasted tomatoes lingered in the hallway, warm and earthy, drifting out from the small kitchen. The light in the dining room was soft, dimmed slightly as the sun fell outside the window, touching the curtains with gold. Claire's home wasn't large, but it felt lived in. Books stacked in corners, crayons in mugs, and a welcome mat slightly frayed at the edges. William stood by the dining table, unsure where to put his hands. He'd brought a bottle of wine, now sitting untouched, on the counter next to a pan of bubbling baked pasta. Claire, in a loose sweater and apron dusted with flour, moved between the kitchen and table, like this wasn't the most significant dinner of their lives. "Just sit wherever," she said, gesturing to the chairs. Leo had already chosen his spot, nearest to the bookshelf. Luca was trying to spin a fork on his finger. Otis sat with both hands folded on the table, his harmonica resting just beside his plate, as if it deserved a seat of its own. William sat slowly. Silence followed. It wasn't heavy, it was watchful, full of cautious energy, like a room of people holding their breath at the same time. Claire broke it with a dry laugh. "I should warn you, this pasta is officially called Mak Nhu O Truong Nung Kong Do Nhu O Truong." Luca lit up. "We named it," Leo added. "We tested it. 17 times. "More," Otis whispered. William smiled. "Sounds like a very serious recipe." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Serious enough to end a noodle fight. That's how you know it's good." As the plates were passed around, Luca leaned across to William, holding up a toy raptor with a pipe cleaner tail. "This is Kevin. He guards the fridge. What's your fridge's name?" William blinked. "I haven't named it." Claire smirked. "I warned you." "Then I guess I've got homework," William said, playing along. "Does Kevin have any special powers?" "His tail shoots ketchup." "Obviously," Leo said under his breath. Otis giggled into his juice box. The tension cracked. Just a little. Midway through the meal, a soft knock came at the door. Claire glanced over, then called out, "Come in, Linda." The front door opened, and a woman in her 70s appeared with a small paper bag. "Forgot to return your cinnamon, sweetheart," she said. Her eyes landed on William. "Ah, so you're the one they wrote about in crayon." William stood quickly. "Nice to meet you." Linda raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't sure you were real. You've been a question mark on the fridge calendar for years." Claire laughed, a little pink in the cheeks. "Linda's our honorary grandma." "I don't babysit after 9 p.m. or clean Lego wounds," Linda warned, then placed the bag on the counter. "Enjoy your first dinner. They've been waiting." She left as quickly as she came. William sat down again, a little stunned. "She's efficient," he said. "She knows everything," Claire muttered. After dinner, dishes clinked gently in the sink. Claire washed. William dried. The boys had moved to the living room, Luca building a fort with couch cushions, Otis at the keyboard tucked beside the bookshelf, and Leo quietly reading from a dog-eared fantasy novel. "Otis," Claire called softly. "Want to show your piece?" The little boy hesitated. Then, as if making a choice only he understood, climbed onto the stool and began to play. Soft, halting notes at first. Then, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." But it wasn't childish. It was careful, measured, intimate. William froze, towel in his hands. Claire wiped her fingers and leaned closer. "I only played it for him twice. He picked it up by ear." William didn't speak. "He's like you that way," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "He doesn't talk much when he's learning, just listens." Otis hit the last note and turned shyly toward the kitchen. William stepped out, walked over, and knelt beside the keyboard. "That was beautiful," he said. "I never played it that well." Otis gave him a small smile, proud and quiet. Back at the table, Luca waved a Lego creation in the air. "Boos! Time for our test. Can you build this dragon without instructions?" William laughed. "I accept your challenge." He sat on the floor beside them. For the first time in years, he wasn't watching his phone, checking a schedule, or thinking ahead. He was just there. Minutes turned into a quiet hour. Then Claire peeked into the living room. "All right, time to brush teeth." 10 more minutes, Luca begged. Claire nodded toward William. "Ask your dad." Luca turned to him, wide-eyed. William opened his mouth, hesitated, then grinned. 10 more minutes." 3 cheers erupted, and Claire just shook her head as she walked back to the kitchen. Later, when the house was quieter, after bedtime stories, hugs at arm's length and hallway giggles, Claire returned to the kitchen. William was still there, rinsing the last glass. "I think I passed the dragon test," he said. Claire leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "Luca's tough. He makes people earn it." They stood in a comfortable quiet for a beat. Then William turned off the faucet, set the glass down gently. "Tonight felt impossible a week ago." Claire nodded. "It was." William looked down, voice softer. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." He turned, his eyes not quite meeting hers. "Have you ever forgiven me?" The room stilled. Claire looked past him, toward the hallway where laughter had echoed just minutes ago. She didn't answer right away. "I tried to hate you," she said eventually. "It was easier than missing you, or hoping." William said nothing. Claire stepped forward and gently took the towel from his hands. "I haven't forgotten, Will, but maybe I don't need to hate you anymore either." She turned back to the sink, and that, somehow, was more honest than a yes. Behind them from the hallway came the sound of Otis playing the harmonica. Just one soft, uncertain note. Then silence. The cafe was quiet, tucked away on a tree-lined street just off the main avenue. Light filtered through the high windows, casting narrow lines across the wooden tables. The scent of espresso and baked bread clung to the walls like memory. Claire sat at a table near the window, fingers wrapped around a ceramic cup she hadn't sipped from. Her coat lay folded on the empty chair across from her, the seat Ryan used to take without asking. He was late, but only by 2 minutes, just long enough to make her nervous. He arrived with a smile, gentle, familiar, holding 2 lattes. "Still no sugar, right?" he said, setting one down in front of her. Claire managed a faint smile. "You remembered?" "Hard to forget. You used to glare at the packet like it insulted your mother." She chuckled softly, but it didn't land like it used to. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that wasn't entirely awkward, just different. "I like this place," Ryan said eventually. "Haven't been here in a while." "We used to come here almost every Thursday," Claire murmured. He nodded. That was the idea. She looked at him, finally. There was no anger in his face, no defensiveness, just a quiet tension, the kind that comes before a decision, not a fight. "I saw your name on the clinic's donor board last week," he said. "Still supporting the after-school music program?" Claire nodded. "Otis wants to learn real piano, not just the keyboard." "Of course he does," Ryan said. "He's got your hands." She paused. "And William's ears." There it was, the name neither of them had said out loud yet. Ryan leaned back slightly, not surprised, maybe even relieved. "You spent time with him," he said gently. Claire nodded. "The boys did too." He looked down at the coffee. "I figured." Claire slid something across the table, a folded piece of paper. A flyer for a children's concert, with 4 tickets, paper clipped at the corner. "I was going to give these to you," she said. "You bought them weeks ago." Ryan didn't reach for it. "I still want you to come," she added quickly. "If you'd want to." "Do you?" he asked. "Want me to come?" Claire hesitated. "I want things to make sense," she said. "I want time, space, honesty." Ryan exhaled. "Claire, I know you're not choosing between us. This isn't about picking sides." She looked at him, surprised. He went on. "If I were William, and I found out I had 3 sons I never knew about, I'd want to be there. I'd fight for it too." "I know," she said, voice breaking slightly. "I don't blame him," Ryan said. "And I don't blame you." Claire swallowed hard. "I thought I'd put it all away, buried it under work and lunches and school forms. But seeing him with them, I didn't expect it to feel like that." Ryan gave her a small, understanding nod, because it was never really gone. She looked away, blinking fast. "I don't know where I'm going, Ryan," she admitted. "I feel like I'm walking through a fog with 3 small hands wrapped around mine, and I can't afford to trip." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You don't have to know. Just don't pretend you do." A young barista walked by and paused at their table. "You two still doing okay? Need anything?" Claire shook her head. Ryan smiled politely. "We're fine." As the barista left, Claire let out a soft breath. "That girl's seen us here a dozen times." "She probably thinks we're married," Ryan said with a sad smile. Claire didn't laugh this time. Instead, she reached out and touched the edge of the coffee cup he'd brought her. The one she hadn't touched. "I've been lucky," she said. "You've been steady, kind, patient, but not unforgettable," Ryan added without resentment. "No," Claire whispered. "That's not what I meant." Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Claire, I want you to have clarity. For you. For them. Even if I'm not in the picture." "That's not fair," she said. "You didn't do anything wrong." "I know," he said, "but sometimes the heart doesn't wait for fairness." He finally reached for the flyer, folded it once, and tucked it into his coat pocket. "I might still go," he said, "just to see Otis play." She looked down, unable to stop the sting rising behind her eyes. Ryan stood, hesitating for just a second before placing a hand over hers. "If this is goodbye," he said, "make sure it's one you believe in." Then he let go. Claire didn't move. She sat there long after he left, her untouched coffee cooling beside her. And then, for the first time in years, her shoulders sank. Her throat closed. Her eyes welled. The tears didn't come like a storm. They came like a release. Soft, slow, and quiet. She didn't wipe them away. She let them fall. The lobby of Ellis Innovations was a blend of chrome and glass, sleek lines and sharp edges softened by natural light pouring in through the atrium's towering windows. A wall-length digital screen scrolled data in muted blues and whites, and the soft hum of innovation buzzed quietly under the marble floors. For most, the space felt intimidating, grand. But today, it felt like something else. It felt like possibility. William stood beside Claire, flanked by 3 small boys, who looked both overwhelmed and quietly thrilled. "This is A spaceship, Luca whispered, eyes darting around the room. Claire smiled. Close enough. The receptionist glanced up, momentarily distracted by the unusual sight of William Smith, the man who usually appeared only through tinted glass elevators or press releases, walking in hand with a child. 3 children, to be exact. A security badge clicked. William nodded toward the elevator. You ready? Otis clutched his harmonica case. Do they have music rooms here? William paused. Not yet, but I think that's about to change. The elevator opened on the R&D floor, a space alive with quiet chaos. Engineers moved between workstations. Mechanical limbs extended and contracted from robotic arms. Screens flickered with code and simulations. Luca ran to the nearest robot dog and yelped with delight. This one looks like Taco. A nearby technician glanced up. Taco? William smiled. Inside joke. James, the head of R&D, stepped out from his glass office, stopping mid-step. Whoa! He took them in. 3 boys standing side by side, different yet uncannily connected. I used to joke you'd clone yourself, James said. Guess you found a better way. William grinned. Meet Leo, Luca, and Otis. James shook each of their hands like they were important clients. Leo was already scanning a wall of touchscreens displaying live AI datasets. What's the model architecture for this predictive loop? James raised an eyebrow. How old are you again? 8.5. Almost 9. William nodded proudly. He's asking better questions than half the VCs we meet. James chuckled, then bent to Leo's level. It's a hybrid stack, a custom ensemble using LSTM, a transformer sublayer, and a bit of voodoo. Leo lit up. Can I see the back end? Claire laughed from behind. He's going to steal your job. Let him try, James said, and guided Leo to a nearby console. Meanwhile, Luca was deep in conversation with an assistant programmer, asking if the robot dogs could be trained to dance. They already know Kung Fu, Luca said seriously. The assistant blinked. What? Luca clapped twice. Hi-ya! The robot dog spun awkwardly. Everyone burst out laughing. Even William, who hadn't truly laughed like that in years. Otis stood by a glass panel, fingers tracing the edge. The lab beyond was quiet. People with headphones working on sound design for haptics. Is there a room here where no one talks? Otis asked. William leaned beside him. That one's sound isolated. You want to see it? Otis nodded. They walked in slowly. Inside, everything was soft. No echo, no hum, just silence. Otis opened his harmonica case and played a single bright note. William stood there, hands in his pockets, as his son filled a technology lab with something older, something warm. I think we need more music around here, William said. Otis didn't stop playing. Claire stood at the edge of the space, next to Hannah Lee, who had watched the entire scene unfold from her office window. He's different, Hannah said, arms folded. Claire smiled. He always had this in him. He just didn't know how to let it out. I think he does now. Hannah's voice softened. They're grounding him in a good way. Claire nodded. They've been my gravity. Maybe now they'll be his. At the end of the tour, William guided the boys to the top floor, the executive boardroom, all glass and steel, with a sweeping view of Manhattan. This is where all the big decisions happen, he said. Luca jumped into a leather chair and spun once before Claire gave him the look. Leo walked slowly to the head of the table. Otis followed, setting his harmonica down on the table. One day, William said, crouching beside them, maybe one of you, maybe all of you, will be here. Not just visiting, but building. Otis looked up. Can I build a music robot that cries? William smiled. Only if it plays Otis originals. Luca leaned on the armrest. Can we name a floor after us? Claire raised a brow. Maybe let him recover from today first. Before they left, Claire guided everyone down to the lobby. "Let's take a photo," she said, nodding toward the company logo. The boys stood in front of the large wall where Ellis Innovations gleamed under polished chrome. William stood behind them, one hand on Leo's shoulder, another on Luca's. Claire lifted her phone. Leo asked, "Should we look serious? Like business photos?" Claire hesitated. "Number, just be who you are." William leaned in. "That's the best photo I'll ever have." They smiled, and somewhere between the flash and the laughter, the image captured more than just faces. It caught on at the beginning.